Hey, we're going to learn the pen tool today, how to draw in Illustrator. The pen tool is a very precise tool, but it does take practice. So let's jump right in. So normally, most images you deal with are made up of pixels, like the one on the right, but we are going to learn to draw using vectors. Which are essentially shapes that that are made out of math, or like their shapes are defined using mathematics, right? And oops, raster images like the one on the right again are made up of pixels. Vector images are made up of what I normally just generalize to call math, but really they're made up of anchor points, handles, and paths. So the anchor points in the drawing on the left are squares, and the paths, which are the actual lines that make up the shape, right? This will become the shape that you're drawing. Um, the paths pass through the anchor points directly, where the handles just tell the line how far to go and in what direction. Okay, so anchor points tell you where the line should go, and handles tell you how far and in what direction the line should go. And the path is your actual line. Um, so let's jump into actually Adobe Illustrator. And on my tool settings, right, I have Window Toolbar, Advanced Toolbar out. There is uh, a pen and a curvature tool. So this is the pen tool on the left, and the curvature tool has like a kind of tail coming out of it, that uh, is just representing how the curvature tool works. I don't use the curvature tool that often, but you might want to experiment with it. We are going to focus on the pen tool though. So there's a few other options under the pen tool, but we will get to those in a second. So just one click onto the pen tool should do it. And you can make a few different marks using the pen tool, and all of it takes practice. So I am actually going to, I'm just going to demonstrate some of the most basic marks I can make, and then we're going to do a little worksheet together as quick as I can. So when I just click, the pen tool makes corners. Okay, so I'm clicking, and that's really all it's doing. And when I come back around to the beginning, I can close the shape, and that's what this circle means. Okay, so the circle is the first of several symbols that can be next to your pen tool that represent it completing different actions. Okay, so um, that circle means we're going to close the shape. So if I close it and I move back to my black selection tool, remember the black one selects the whole object and the white one selects individual anchor points. I can click and drag it over there, and you can see that it's filled with white and it has a thin black line, and we can raise that black line to be thicker so we can see it. So that's the most basic form of mark making. I didn't click and drag at all during that. Clicking and dragging is the next type of mark that you can make, which makes curved lines. So when we just clicked to make a corner, we only add an anchor point to that. And I have View Smart Guides on, So when I hover over one of these, it gives me a little explanation next to my mouse of like what I'm hovering over. That is an anchor point, okay? And that's made by just clicking once with the pen tool. If I click and drag, which means like I hold down my mouse, so I've clicked, and see when the first moment I clicked, it made a square anchor point, but now I'm dragging and it's making these circle handles. And people get confused here because when they start dragging, they start thinking that this line that my anchor point is dragging out is actually the line that I'm drawing, but that's not the case. It is actually just a handle, which is an invisible line that's part of the mathematics. So when you click and drag, you drag out handles on the front and back of the anchor point. So right now I'm dragging out a handle that actually isn't affecting the existing line. The existing line is that arc, but this handle will drag out it will affect the next line. Okay, so I'm going to drag it out pretty far so we can get an idea of how these affect the line and then release. Okay, so let's make a heart. So I just need one click down here to make a corner. And then um, if I want this to be a smooth anchor point, which is what we call anchor points that have handles attached to them, and the handles are straight across from each other, tangent to the line, we can click and drag on the closing anchor point or the first anchor point we made. If we click and drag on it, we'll close the shape and also make this anchor point into a smoothing anchor point, okay? So we're always dragging in the direction that we are trying to draw the line, okay? So if I'm making a heart and I'm drawing it clockwise, I am going to, I guess, just click once. Let's draw the right half and then we'll come around to the left half. So I'm starting in the center here. Once, and then we want to define a curve up here. So we click and drag, and we still are dragging like kind of clockwise to the right. And then maybe, we can say that maybe this doesn't have enough. So we could add another, doesn't feel voluminous enough, I mean. So we could add another anchor point over there, and I'm clicking and dragging, and that is dragging again, just clockwise. So we'll do similar shape over here. And I'm again just dragging clockwise the whole time. And I'm always kind of adjusting the back end and thinking about the front. But if things don't end up perfect, you can always adjust. So with the white selection tool, we can come into any of these shapes after the fact and we can adjust them until they're perfect. So a lot of the times when I was beginning to figure out how to use the pen tool, I mostly just got as close as I could and then adjusted afterwards, okay? So let's say we want to make this heart match this side where we don't have a second anchor point here. We only have one on this side. I can add and subtract anchor points using the add anchor point tool or the delete anchor point tool. And these function a little bit differently, okay? So if we choose these function a little bit different. The delete anchor point tool functions a little bit differently than just hitting delete. That's what I meant, but we will get to that in a second. The add anchor point tool does exactly what it says. You just have to click on a line and it adds the anchor point there. And what it does is divide any, like this math, this handle was telling the shape to go like way far out into space. But it kind of divided that shape into these two anchor points, and then we can now adjust to get a little bit closer to the other side. And we can learn how to make symmetrical shapes and everything later on a little bit faster than this, but that's the idea. Let's subtract some anchor points and compare that to using the delete anchor point tool, okay? or just the delete button, I mean. So I've grabbed the delete anchor point tool and I am going to subtract, I guess, this anchor point up here. Remember, I have smart guides on, so I can see that it says anchor point there. And if I click on anything other than an anchor point with this tool, it might give me like a little error message. So we got to click on an anchor point. And what it does is it left the anchor points on either side, but it got rid of that anchor points, okay? Right, so same thing for curved anchor points. The curves are still trying to do their job and push this out into space, right? That's what this handle is telling it. Um, but we lost that anchor point. All right, now we're going to select an anchor point with the white selection tool and hit delete, okay? I'll even move this over here for a second. We're going to select this anchor point, or actually, this will actually be better demonstrated over here, sorry. We're going to select this anchor point, just one, and I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard. So what that does is it actually destroyed the closed shape. So these shapes are no longer connected anymore by a solid line, right? And if we were to have no fill on this shape, it would actually just be a line and there it would be complete emptiness there. That visible line is only the edge of the shape. I prefer that people like can make closed shapes and things. I don't particularly like it when, like, if you have an outline on the rest of your shape and you've got a fill on it, if you've like accidentally deleted a line, I think it can look kind of messy if you're, but also it can be used, this technique can be used successfully in certain situations to make interesting patterns. Uh, so let's jump into the worksheet I have, which is going to break down some of the more detailed aspects uh, of the pen tool. Um, so I have two worksheets here. I am actually going to drag both of them in here, and we are going to do both of them in this file. Um, okay, and we are going to make a second artboard for that one, right? Artboards are pages in an Illustrator document. So this is the artboard tool, and you can come up to the plus symbol to make another artboard, okay? And then you can export them separately, but we'll talk more about that later, or maybe we already have. Okay, so I'm going to make these bigger, and we are going to make them a template layer. So both of these are on the same layer. I should be holding shift while I do this one so that it stays proportional. Both of these are on the same layer right now. That's layer 1. So we are going to make a new layer. So that's where we're going to draw all of our stuff. And then we're going to double click on layer 1 and check off template. Okay, so this is going to dim them. Yeah, there it goes. And just make it generally easier to draw on top of them. So now on layer 2, I'm going to grab my pen tool. You can also just hit P, and I am going to click and draw all over these. And we can do it without worrying about moving our underlayer, which is really annoying. Okay, so please consider taking advantage of using these, of making a template layer. I mean, definitely do it. Definitely make a template layer. Like, you could draw over like flowers and everything that way. All right, so I'm going to just click to complete exercise 1. Oops, for some reason didn't get my first click. And you've probably noticed that I have all of my keystrokes being displayed on the bottom right, and the keystrokes become, oh, we should be doing this exercise in no fill land. Okay, so I'm going to take off fill, right? We want to choose the square that has no circle in the center, no hole in the center, and choose the none symbol, which is the red line, the Ghostbuster symbol. And then we just want like a black stroke, and you might want to make a nice thick black stroke uh, so that you can see what you're doing. All right. Exercise 1 is just clicks. If you want to end a shape without um, coming back to the beginning, right? Like we could end a shape by doing this, but we can end a line just by hitting enter here. Okay. Uh, so I am going to do exercise 2, and exercise 2 is again just clicks. All right, exercise 3 is where we start getting into the clicking and dragging that we talked about. So people's tendency when I say click and drag on exercise 3 is to click and drag from 1 to 2 and then release and be like, well, where's the line? No, if we want to make an arc that goes up like this, we want to drag up on 1 and release, click and drag down on 2 and then release. Okay, so click and drag up and click and drag down. All right, so you'll notice how um, when I do this, I if I drag up too far, things will be like a little lopsided. And you'll notice that I'm always looking at like the arc that I just made, and I'm also thinking ahead to the arc that I'm making while I'm drawing these. But even if you draw it like this, first off, you can hit Control Z to go backwards and you can like give it another try or whatever. But even if that isn't working, you can hit Enter and just adjust the handles and the anchor points to be in the right spots. But the idea is with this worksheet is that you draw all of these in one line, okay? So a lot of people also have a tendency to um, just draw one arc and then hit enter and then draw the other arc, where the intention is that you should practice this worksheet until you can draw all of these exercises perfectly on every try, essentially. That's the idea. It's a drill worksheet. Okay, so this exercise 3 is just clicking and dragging. Exercise 4 involves using another button, which is why I have uh, my buttons clicks, my keyboard strokes showing on the screen because the timing here is important. Okay, so for the first one in exercise 4, I just click and drag up, just like the same as exercise 3. Because we want the line to go up and to the right eventually, but up at the beginning, we are clicking and dragging up. Then this new little arc is my real line, and I'm clicking and dragging down at this one. And before I release, or actually after I release, I'm going to hold Alt, okay? And my um, cursor turns into a little caret, a little arrow. And I'm going to grab the handle and drag this handle so it's also pointing upwards, okay? So we're making a corner this way. Um, we could choose to have this face anyway, right? We could choose to have it face like this, and we could make our arcs go around like that, but we actually want it to again face directly up. So I'm holding Alt to adjust this handle. Okay, so clicking and dragging downwards, holding Alt, and clicking and dragging it upwards for the next arc. Okay, because that handle that drags out on the back end is the handle that affects the arc coming up, okay? Or the hand, yeah. Uh, Let me do that one again seamlessly just in case. All right, so this first arc is just like the first arc in exercise 3. You drag your handle out straight up and then you drag your other handle out so it essentially should match up here at the top. For this next handle, we're going to hold Alt and click and drag it upwards. Otherwise, we would end up making this shape again, this curvy shape. We want a corner there. So that's what Alt is doing, is allowing us to convert the handles to corners and vice versa. Um, so click and drag down here again until the handle that's important right now is the handle that's on the top of the arc. So just adjust that until it's like in the right spot. And then hold Alt and click and drag that so that it is up, pointing up, because this arc goes up. And then click and drag down and hit enter. Okay. Let's do exercise 5, which is a quick way to convert arcs to corners. If the next line is going to be straight. Okay, so this first arc is just like the first arc in exercise 3 and 4. You click and drag straight up, and then you click and drag straight down so that the handle on the top is kind of even with this handle. And then this time we are going to just click once on the anchor point. All right, and now we click over on the other side. So what that did is it added, or it removed a handle, okay? So click and drag up, click and drag down, click on the anchor point, and you're going to notice that this handle will be removed and this arc will no longer be curved, okay? So we click once on the anchor point, and now we have a straight line. You can click and hit enter. Exercise 6 is the reverse of that. So what if you have a straight line and you want to transition to a arc, okay? Click, click to make the straight line. And now I can just click and drag on any handle, like while I'm drawing with the pen tool. Yeah, I can click and drag on an anchor and it will drag out a handle. All right, so drag that so it's facing pretty much straight up. And then grab this one. All right, and hit enter. Um, the uh, the second worksheet is for you to experiment with tracing, and you could make these any colors that you wished. So it's right, I'm holding Alt to make corners. It's practicing all of this stuff. And then it's also practicing getting comfortable, leaving things a little bit messy, and then going back in and making it right, okay? So with the white selection tool, you can adjust anything that you like. And then it's probably easiest to draw the shapes with no fill on, but afterwards putting some fill on them is a fun way to kind of, almost a coloring book. All of these are really valuable to learn how to trace around and everything. So please consider completing these worksheets. We normally do them as kind of a required in-class activity. There are many other ways to draw in Illustrator, and learning the pen tool takes time, but it's worth the practice. It's going to be really valuable for drawing fashion flats, which if you're at Mass Art, you you'll learn next semester. So please, please practice. All right. Bye.